Hello, everybody. How is everyone on this wonderful Sunday? The last Sunday before Christmas, hey? How is everyone? Good to see so many familiar faces in the live chat. We are actually just waiting for Melinda. I'm not sure if she's running late. I've just sent her a message, but yeah, we'll get there. Don't worry, guys. So yeah, let's just see what's going on in the comments. Linda Thompson, good to see you. And she says, I'm sure here Melinda gets respect for her years of research, dedication, and experience in these topics. Absolutely. She deserves as much respect as we can give. She is an awesome, awesome lady. Strafe Wilson. Tom DeLong tweeted Christopher Sharp's article today, Liberation Times. Well done, that man. Yeah, that's pretty epic, isn't it? Yeah. Chris has been doing some great work. I know, like, Lou Elizondo's retweeted his articles, as has Chris Mellon, now Tom DeLong. So that's always a good sign. Melinda tends to run late. Yeah, I've noticed that before, bless her. But we'll get there. We'll get there. And she has just popped in. So let me just bring Melinda in. Melinda, you're on mute. There we go.
I can't hear. I'm not hearing.
Uh-oh. I can hear you okay. I don't know.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Okay. Sorry, bear with us.
Muted? I can't hear you.
No. If she can check her connections. Sorry, guys. You're muted now. You're muted. I can't hear you. Let me message Melinda on message. I'll send you a message.
Okay, there we go.
I can hear. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Finally,
Yay!
yes.
How are you?
Technical problems.
Right?
Sorry, you guys. I was having all sorts of technical things with trying to get my computer up and running. See, I come to my office to do these because, long story short, the internet's better. But it's getting in here to do it and everything between traffic and then having to get my laptop up and running. It's like,
no problem at all.
Sorry, was it 3 after? Okay, well, I'm not too bad.
No, you're absolutely fine. And thank you so much. I'm so glad we're here today because we've tried to arrange this a couple of times and we've finally done it.
Yes. Here, I'm going to turn on another light and here, a little better lighting. Here we go.
No problem. While Melinda does that, I'm just going to say this is actually part of Contact Week as arranged by James Iandoli of Engaged in the Phenomenon. He's put out a lot of good videos over on his channel, as has Ryan Robbins, a.k.a. UFO Jesus, over on his channel, Post Disclosure World. So go and check out both those channels for other content relating to Contact Week. The links are below in the description. And so, yeah, this is like the final day of Contact Week, the 19th. It's been going since the 12th. And here we are with Melinda. So
that's right. Well, I'm excited to be here. And gosh, let me see. Today I listened to the panel that Ryan and James Iandoli did. Well, apparently they did it yesterday, but it just got posted today. Yeah. And I was listening to most of that, and it was very good. James Iandoli had actually called me and said, had tried to call me to get me to be on it. He had asked me a bunch of times. I said yes. And then I didn't hear from him for days. Well, all of a sudden, the morning of the panel, he's calling me. I have laundry going, the washing machine going. I'm doing dishes in the kitchen with all that water running. I didn't hear the phone. Oh. And it was like an hour later when I noticed that I had missed the phone call. And meanwhile, it was already up and going. So otherwise I would have been on that. And listening to it, I wish I had been, because I had quite a few things I would have said for sure. But that's all right. They did a great job, and it wasn't meant to be, because it was like an hour into it by the time I realized he'd been calling me. And he hadn't given me a time. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to do it at this time. Yeah. It was just, anyways, and he apologized later when I did talk to him, but wasn't meant to be. There you go. So I'm so glad, though, Vinnie, to be here with you.
Thank you.
So excited to be doing this.
So we could, I mean, this is something we chatted about before. you could actually be here for 6 hours if we covered a lot
Oh
of the
no.
things that you could talk about, because
Can you hear me?
you cover. I can hear you okay. Have you lost me?
Yeah, it broke. Yeah, I lost you for a little while there. So if you could
Okay.
repeat what you said, I don't know why I lost you for a minute.
I was just saying, if we covered everything that I'd like you to talk about, we could be here for like 6+ hours, because obviously you talk on the working groups, the MILABS,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
many other things. But we're here today to really talk about contact and your abduction experiences. So hopefully, you know, we'll have you back another time to cover those other topics.
Oh, sure. I mean, I know we originally talked about the history of the working group, and then we talked about doing MILABS, and and then we said, okay, it's
Yeah,
contact week, decision made. I love it.
exactly. Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
said, I'm so glad. I'm so glad to be here, and we might have a little delay here, so I'm going to try not to talk over you. Um, and But yeah, I'm just thrilled to be here, and we'll go wherever you want to take it. When you said we could go on for 6 hours, I heard the over 7 hour panel. I listened yesterday. I had a million other things I was supposed to get done, and I got caught up in it, and next thing I know, I pretty much listened to all of it. I listened to some early, and then the later in the day the rest. But anyways, it was really fun to hear you guys do that, and you were so cute at the end. You're like, I love you guys.
Yeah,
I
it was
love
fun. I love.
we're sharing the love in the community.
That's it.
I
It's one
love
of
it. I
those
love it.
things, you know,
Yeah,
sometimes things get a bit heated and that, and yeah, so sometimes it's just nice to show a bit of love and appreciation for everybody. So
that's right.
yeah,
That's right. That's right.
definitely.
Well, yeah, it's important. Gosh, this lighting in here is just not cutting it, but that's the way it is. Oh well. So what?
Well, before we get into the actual abduction contact discussion, I'd like to just
Yes.
talk, or for you to just give us a little bit of information on the UFO sightings tours that you run, if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I'm always good for talking about it. Sometimes when I do interviews and panels, people get mad or make comments like, "Oh, you're plugging your thing." But you guys, it's not only what I do all the time, it's people having sightings all the time. And I feel like when I talk about it, people can't wrap their head around, when I say what I'm about to say, which is I just completed tour. So we just had tour 1,460. So 1460. I'm this close to 1,500. I was thinking of 2,000 recently, but I got to, that'll be at least a year from now. But yeah, coming up on 1,500, but like I said, 1,460. That's a lot. It's a total of about, I just conservatively did the math, and you guys, extremely conservative is to say it's 94 or 9,500 people that I've taken out,
Wow.
and that's conservative because I've done a lot of big groups and I average a certain amount on all the tours that I do. And, so, a lot of people, and we see sightings every time. This area is a hot spot. People say, okay, that can't be. Blah, 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 blah. And I do talk all about satellites and make sure people know all about satellites so we're able to rule them out, as well as planes and helicopters and drones. And I cover all that. In fact, some people get mad that I cover too much of it in the beginning. I talk for a half hour before we even start looking, because I want people to know all those things, because I say you only have a real unknown or unidentified when, and only when, you can rule out all the identified stuff first. Then you're left with an unknown or an unidentified. Can you hear me okay? You froze up again. What is going on?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Yeah, no
Okay,
problem.
okay.
You
It just froze up for a
you
second.
glitch a little bit, but the sounds great. So we're just going to roll with it.
Okay, okay. I don't know why. It could be just I'm doing it at my office here at the Center for the New Age, where I do my tours out of, and it could just be we have a lot of people here on the internet or something right now, which will sometimes slow it down. And yet it's still better than what I have at home. So there we go.
No problem.
So let me see here. Okay, great, great. Thank you for understanding, and I apologize for everyone for that, but I can, it is what it is. But then we've seen, so we always have sightings, and I tell people we've seen full structure, which is stuff close enough, to see, like, this hovering in the air, and well, you'll get that on camera there, and all its detail, when you see metal, full structure. Hang on, my computer's doing something weird. Gosh, I hate it once I get on and it wants to load and change and do all this stuff. God, it wants to just do everything. It's like, stop. I'm constantly having to tell it, no, bad computer, no. Anyway, sorry. So going back to, yeah, we've seen just so much stuff. We've seen full structures, I started to say. The last one was just about 2 weeks ago. So we've now, or it's bad weather and stuff, probably more like 3 weeks. But about 3 weeks ago, clients and we had a fully structured craft sighting. That was structured craft sighting tour number 37. Is that right? Okay. But we have seen sometimes more than one structured object. So sometimes there's been 2 in the sky at once, or 1 and 10 minutes later, another on the same tour, or an hour later, yet the same tour, another. So we currently hold at 58 structured craft. Now, granted, that's out of 1,400, and 60 tours. But all the other times we're still seeing stuff. I tell people it's still structured. It's just up too high to see the shape. It's just up too high. But when you see things flying in formations, when you see things make right angle turns, zigzags, when you see formations make a right angle turn, we flash at stuff with a laser pointer. We get it to flash back at us. There's nothing on a satellite that can flash back at a laser. Yes, I cover all about iridium flares, but that's actually a rare event, and the apps tell you when it's going to happen. So, but when we have stuff with a delayed flash, only after we flashed at it, we flash at it, it flashes back. We flash at it, it flashes back. We wait a while. We've even tested it, waited a long time, flash again, it flashed back, that kind of thing. So we're getting interaction. I've learned so much through the process. I've learned so much about the public's knowledge or lack of knowledge on the subject. One major thing that, I'm friends with Dan Sheehan, long story short, who's the lawyer, of course, for Lou. And I've been meaning I just had a conversation really recently with Dan, but did not bring this up because we had limited time and we had other things we had to talk about. I kicked myself for not getting an update from Lou, so I could be sharing that when I'm doing the various interviews this week. But also, we're discussing, like I said, something in particular. But I've been thinking about, and I want to relay to Lou, or even be able to talk to him directly, which I never have, but at least relay it through Dan to say, the public is not aware of what's going on with the disclosure stuff. Yeah, we're celebrating this field as well. We should. It's a huge milestone, historic moment in ufology, no doubt. But it's not. I take out over 9,000 people, as I said, on my tours. For the last 4 years, I've been bringing this up. This year, because stuff, as you well know, I know you're on this, we all know listening right now, is breaking like daily on this subject, I mean, sometimes daily, at least weekly. And so as those things happen.
Oh, can you still hear me? You've just seemed to have frozen and gone silent. Oh, the joys of live streaming. Oh, and she's gone. Well, hopefully Melinda will jump back in soon. Just want to say thank you, Linda Thompson, for joining and becoming a member of the channel. I really appreciate that. That really means a lot. Thank you. So while we wait, let's just check through some messages. If anyone's got any questions, you can pop them in capital letters, or if you're feeling generous, super chat is always available, but obviously I don't expect anybody to do that. Strafe, when she sees a sighting, does she collect the data published MUFON? That's a great question. When she pops back up, I will certainly ask her that, because if she's having so many sightings, it'd be good to collate such data and then report it onto somewhere, or even archive it for future. Oh, Laura Sosa, thank you so much for the $2 super sticker. Thank you. Let's see. Apologies, guys. What I will do while we're waiting is let's have a look at Melinda's website. Where's it gone? There it is. Oh, she's back. There we go.
God, I hate when technical stuff happens. It's like,
don't worry.
And the whole point of doing it here is because the internet's better. But no, I'm probably right now, everybody here with a computer is on it or something. It's just like, this is nuts. So sorry.
No,
apologize.
That's
if
fine.
It's on my end. I mean, it just suddenly bunked us off. And if that's my end, but it probably is.
I think it might be. I have quite a strong hardwired connection.
Yeah.
So
well,
but don't worry, it happens.
Okay. Yeah, I'm so sorry. That's so frustrating. But luckily, I was able to come right back in. Anyway, so sorry, everyone. Where was I? So my thing is wanting to relay to Lou, look, and to Chris, who Dan also talks to all the time, to say, look, you guys, the word's not getting out there to the public. I know you're doing a lot of interviews. Yeah, you're doing some mainstream, sure, but they're doing a lot of interviews speaking to the choir, to us, which is fine. But they need to get the word out to the public more. The public is not aware. My clients are people who say, oh, I follow disclosure. And they say, oh, the Tic Tac, wasn't that in 47? Jokingly say that. But I mean, I've had people go, oh, you mean like Roswell? And I'm like, well, no, I mean, like, are you following the Gillibrand Amendment? And they have no clue. When I bring that up, I've had maybe 2 clients say, oh, yeah, I know what that is, And so you guys, we have a lot to do to get the word out. Yes, we're celebrating. It's a huge thing. It's a huge historic moment for the field, no doubt. But the word's not getting.
Oh, we're losing her again.
Okay, I'm back.
It might be easier if you just stream without the video. If you stop your cam, it might stop it from cutting out. Oh,
I'm here, Vinnie.
Oh, sorry, you're frozen on my screen. I can't see you. But I can hear you okay, that's fine. Yeah, can you hear me? Oh, no. Oh, dear. If you can hear me, it might be easier just to stream audio only. So just click on the bottom where it says cam, stop cam. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm not sure what's. There we go. Oh, she's gone. I'm just going to send Melinda a message, guys, in the private chat. And we'll do audio only.
I'm here. Are you here?
Yeah.
Okay.
It might be easiest at the bottom. If you look on the tabs at the bottom, it says stop cam, and we can do audio only, and that should stop any.
Well, let's keep trying this because I know people prefer it this way. But
yeah, no problem.
God, how frustrating. I hope it doesn't keep doing it. I'm like, I mean, I do interviews all the time, and this doesn't normally happen. Maybe it'll happen once during a thing, not constantly. This is not the norm. So
no problem at all.
Okay.
Before you continue, I'm just going to give a quick shout out to Walker Dale. Thank you so much for the $5. And he says, thank you both for your great work in this field. We are lucky to have good people like you two. Thank you so much. That's
yes, kind. Thank you, Walker, for supporting him. That's fantastic. And for your nice comments too. So yeah, like I was saying, as kept interrupting me, as I want to relay to Lou, look, you need to get the word out, and to Chris too, because the public doesn't know, and I think they need to do more mainstream stuff. I know they're part of a team. They're not alone. Why aren't we hearing from the other team members, the other people involved? Again, the public's not getting it, but I also am quick to say too, the public's not watching any news or information. People are proud of the fact they're uninformed. I don't watch the news. I don't read newspapers. I don't listen to anything. And they're proud, pardon me, you guys, but if you're saying that, you're proud of your stupidity, because you cannot be an informed citizen, an informed voter, without knowing where things are. Even if you disagree with them, then you vote accordingly. Okay. And so you have to watch all the mainstream and all the alternative stuff to know what's being said. But people are very proud of how uninformed they are. I don't read or watch the news. Well, guess what? All those people, and here in the US, it's a big thing. Okay. All those people aren't clued in on this. They have no idea this is going on. And when you talk to them, even though they say they have an interest in the subject, you guys, the fear of ridicule is alive and well. I get it from all my clients. They're afraid of what their coworkers, their family, their friends are going to say about this, their neighbors. The fear of ridicule is alive and well. And then I just heard on that panel today, did you hear it, Vinnie, at all? Were you watching any of it?
I started watching it before we did this, and I'm going to finish it off afterwards.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Well, they talk about, there's this question Ryan brings up, are there less abductions? Are abductions happening? Is it the numbers down? We're not hearing about as much. I know why you're not hearing about it. Actually, the numbers are up. When you actually talk to the major abduction researchers, the numbers are up. And we're having more and more of people with their families involved, where abductees are old enough that they had kids. It's happening to their kids. Now they're having grandkids. It's happening to them. Okay, you guys, this is not going away. It's a huge thing. Why are you not hearing about it? Because the fear of ridicule is alive and well. Because I hear it from my clients, 9,000 over on every tour. I also do readings all the time. I hear it from my reading clients. People are afraid of what other people are going to think. And so much damage was done by the ridicule factor. I guess give one win to the CIA. I think they created that originally. And it's like, you guys, people are so afraid of what other people are going to think. It's amazing that senators and congressmen have jumped on board with this, given what they're risking with their careers and reputations based on that. But it makes you go, okay, what happened in those closed door sessions that made them have enough evidence that convinced them to move forward on this? Who all was testifying? Well, we know some of those things, like John Burroughs and Bledsoe and, people that were. So it's like, okay, what else were they hearing that made them go, oh my God, we need to pay attention to this. And it changed the whole attitude about it. But again, that's not getting out to the public. And when the information that they got that changed their minds needs to be shared with the public to change the public's minds. The public ends up going, we don't get why they're doing this. Of course they wouldn't, because they haven't been given any of the evidence for why they did what they did. And then Lou and Chris are afraid to death to talk about it because on that end they're being told, stop talking about it. And then they have their NDAs that say stop talking about it. And so what you end up with is the public being completely uninformed, wondering what's going on, and seeing it as even people in this field. I have a friend who's a full-time researcher in this field and is one of the most up people on the subject you could meet. And she says, and we're hearing this from other people, it, this is Blue Book all over again. We're not going to get anything. They're using this to bury it further. We're hearing people say that. Well, how do we keep that from happening? Is you, me, certainly everyone like you and I, like you with a public format, to educate people and to increase your audience size, market, advertise, do whatever to get the word out there. We're all talking to the choir. We're all talking to each other, which is great. It's a very active Twitter community. Wonderful. It's not getting out there to the public.
Wave Soul, thank you for the $10, Nathan. It raises a good point here. Always great to see talk of how we can bring this conversation to a larger audience. But what talking points should we focus on for conversation starters?
Well, it's funny you should say that. I mean, okay, let's say with the subject overall, and then I'll talk about abduction and contact.
Cool.
Okay, because that actually gets to, I told you I had an announcement, so that's a perfect inroad into that. Yeah. Okay, so starting with the UFO subject overall, it's going to sound boring as hell, but to bring the public up to speed, it's got to be about the evidence and the history, the historical cases, because they're not getting that in this disclosure thing, if they're following at all, but most aren't. I mean, like, no one is but us, truth be told. But and yet when I say us, yeah, okay, that's maybe 10,000 people. That's great. We got to get this out to 10 million people, or better yet, worldwide, 10 billion people, So how do we do that? Okay. But so like I said, it's going to sound boring as hell, but where we start is the evidence. You got to talk, even with abduction contact, but particularly UFOs overall. I said the evidence, meaning, again, you get into the historical data like crash retrievals and military witnesses, which has a huge historic component. Yeah, we're also quick to mention the current stuff, and I realize a lot of people got into this field because of the current newer stuff, I mean, 2004 to present, and certainly in the last 4 years. But you guys, there's 70 years. There's more than 70. That, anyone who watched Ancient Aliens for years and years, there's more than 70 years. But there's at least 70 years of modern ufology to say, look, there's a lot of research, a lot of data, a lot of military cases. There's a lot of huge witnessed cases. There's landing trace evidence cases. It'd be really nice if some researcher really stepped up about the landing trace evidence cases. In the past, there were some people, one famous individual passed away. There are, like I said, witness cases, landing trace evidence, crash retrievals, all sorts of physical analysis and analysis done of videos and photos. I mean, it's so much, it's actually kind of overwhelming. I've been in the field for 32 years, and I'm constantly both having to be remembered of past stuff I've already learned to remember it again. Unfortunately, I don't have the memory of Dolan, or someone like him, or Dan Sheehan, or someone who can go boom, boom, boom. I wish I did, and at times I do. Like, people always say, "Oh, you have such good memory," and I'm like, yeah, I strive to be like them, but I mean, like, but also realizing how many things come up that I knew little about, famous cases, that I'd heard of, but I don't know the specifics. Part of it is we all have lives and we only have so much time. That's true with me. And because of my own abduction experiences, I focused on being an abduction researcher, and then I had the MILAB, military involvement experiences, and focused on that. So when it comes to that, and even abductions, I could say, yeah, I know a lot, and I know most of the historic data and blah, blah, blah. But some of the other areas I don't. But that's all right. Everyone in this field eventually becomes kind of a specialist, because it is so much, and you can't be on top of all of it all the time. I mean, even Dolan is a specialist. It's the history. That's what he specializes in. And great, okay, the history and a greater political picture. Same with Dan Sheehan. He specializes in being an attorney for military witnesses and the greater political picture, and with me, it's abductions and MILABS. And same with, that's another thing. The abduction researchers, one of the reasons you're not hearing as much from them, I mean, yes, there's books, and even on that panel today, a couple of them brought up, newer books by Yvonne Smith and Kathleen Martin and Mary Rodwell and Barbara Lamb. So there's newer books. Well, a couple of things happen to abduction researchers. First off, some key researchers have passed away. I could name names, but everyone, there's like 5, 6 major significant ones that passed away in the last 10 years or less, kind of thing. And then because of an increase in cases, those people who are working with the abductees are doing what I call triage. It's all about stopping the bleeding, and they're helping the abductees, and they're so busy doing that they can't stop and get the research out and write about it. Now, another thing is we just went 2 or 3 years without having major conferences on this subject, only a few.
Yeah.
When the major conferences happen, I encourage both the conference producers and the speakers, approaching them and stuff to say, look, let's address this. Let's address the contact and the abduction. Sure. When conferences come back, are we all talking disclosure? Hell yeah. Duh. Okay. But that's a given. And we're talking about crash retrieves. Okay. We know the things that are going to be included because they're the things that are prominent in the field and are going to get attention. Great. Let's also make sure contact and abductions are being talked about there. But that's another reason. So I say to people, it hasn't gone away. You're just not hearing about it because you're not hearing from the experiencers because the ridicule's alive and well, or the fear of it anyways. You're not hearing about it from the media because they're not paying any attention to any of this. And if they are, it's very mainstream disclosure stuff. You're not hearing it from those pressing disclosure because, oh my God, we can't talk about that right now. Heaven forbid we bring up anything. It was very interesting. I don't have it here in front of me. I wish I did. Oh, yes. No, I don't. That's a different book. But Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, which I'm quick to say here brought in a bunch of other subject matter out of the blue into the disclosure discussion, through. Some people say, oh, God, this is going to throw a wrench. It's going to cause problems. No, you guys, it made us say, no, there's more going on here. And that's a good thing. So anyone can look around, look back and go, did that cause huge problems? No. But what it did is it brought that stuff into the discussion, which I'm glad that it did. There's lots more there. We realize how layered and complicated this subject is. And amongst us who already know, in the community, UFO Twitter, whatever, amongst us who already know, that's okay to address these other subjects. We're like ready for the next step. But the public, we got to go back to, again, what I was just saying, the evidence. You've got to go to the evidence cases and present that.
Yeah.
And those people in Congress and that, Congress, House and Senate here in the US were persuaded on the evidence. They got to get that out there. Now, it may take public hearings, according to Bassett, maybe next year. A lot of us are going, maybe 2 years, but I think that's coming, and so I agree with them there. And it may, God, it'd be wonderful it came up this year. But I think they got to go into their 90-day releases every 90 days, right? For the new group, whatever. Do we know, Vinnie? Do you know the name of the new group? I don't.
It hasn't been released yet. They've not formalized it because obviously there was talk of Astro. Yeah, that would be great. So hopefully
as opposed
along those lines.
As opposed to what I call someone call it the MSG sauce, or I call the OI sauce.
Yeah.
The OI MSG. Oh yeah. But and the whole long name, which from the acronym, I'd have to sit here and go and remember the name. But I mean, not that it needs a catchy acronym, but it helps, and it'll certainly help the public wrap their head around it.
Indeed, yeah.
Some people even wonder if some of that was deflection deliberately. Maybe. But anyway, so it's been interesting developments. I think everybody has really good insight about it. I think so many people, yourself, your guests, certainly Ryan and his comments, and Ian Doley, and and your everyone on that panel that you just did, witnesses and etc. UCR, those guys. I mean, everything we're hearing about, kind of in this closer community. I think people are being very logical and very intelligent about it, and I'm impressed by all this younger crowd that's intelligent. I always say ufology said forever. We need younger people. You go to the events and the conferences, and the average age was 65. No joke. And so it's like, well, be careful what you ask for, because now we have all these younger people. And I'm going to encourage. I'm glad that Bassett came on that panel with you guys.
Yeah.
Yes, Bassett he's been through it. He's been in it as longer than I've been in 32 years. He's actually been in it longer than me. So it's like, wait a second, he has a lot to say about this. I would love Don Schmidt to start being interviewed by all you guys, because his background is not just Roswell. He has a whole background in being one of the heads of one of the major research organizations.
I spoke to Don last week.
Very good. Very good. Good. I'll have to go. So that's up, that recording?
Yeah, I did an ISA
Oh,
panel discussion, so yeah, you can catch Don on
okay,
that.
okay, thank you. Oh, an ICER, yeah. Well, have him also by himself. And the guys from
I
ICER,
planned it.
they need to be out there more. And yeah, you know, these groups can do these panel things, but they all would be amazing individual guests.
Sure.
You know, whether it's the Scientific Coalition or ICER or the people working with Avi Loeb, and you know, so it's like, gosh, you know, the amount of really good qualified guests people can have is endless, you know.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me, because that makes me go, well, you know, I'm not sure I have the qualifications of some of those people,
Oh,
but
come
you
on.
know, thank you. But I've been in the field for 32 years, and I am a public abductee. And the one thing where well, there's two areas where I feel like I can say it's not an ego thing. I just think I've earned from a lot of research, two areas, which is the MILABS area and the history of the working group area, where I feel like, okay, there I actually know some stuff, you know, and
Yeah.
certainly with MILABS, and kind of by default, because you had Carla Turner passing away, the other major researchers, even we just had lost Leo Sprinkle, unfortunately, and he had
Yeah.
many MILAB cases that he worked with. And I one time interviewed him extensively about that when I eventually do a book. These interviews with the major researchers and their data on it will be in there, besides, you know, besides the experiencers themselves. But
Yeah.
it's by default, I feel like the last man standing, and Helmut and Marion Lammer, who wrote about it in their book MILABS, you know, so I kind of feel like by default I'm like the last one in the field really talking about this, with a few other experiencers that could talk about it, and are quite qualified to do so and have their own experiences. Misha Johnston, Nadine Lawlich, you know, come to mind right away, as well as others. You know, by the way, if he's listening to this right now, Jay, I hope he is, or at least I hope he will later. I'm forgetting what Jay's last name is. He was just on the panel this morning, and the one with you guys.
J. Christopher King.
Yeah, Jay King. Yeah, Jay. You and I, man, we got to talk. I love everything you're saying about the subject. Thank you for representing the experiencer community or the abductee community so well, and you're articulate and beautiful about it. And I look very forward to discussing it with you, because yay, you know, and so that's what it takes. And these younger, fresher faces in the community who are experiencers and leading, you know, Eric Mitchell comes to mind, you know, these people leading these abduction discussion groups online, and Facebook and whatnot. I'm like, great, we need them out there talking, because you guys, I guarantee you, if a bunch of us who are familiar with this were talking about it more often, no one would think, like Ryan asked on the panel day, how come the subject's gone away? You would realize how prevalent it is, how robust the research is, how much is going on. On that same note, so I already said, someone asked the question just then, right? How do we get this out there, you know, and how do we spread it? Obviously, approaching the media, you know, that might be tough. It might be more like as it comes up than reacting appropriately, and starting with those people in the community who are already in the media to have them address these things. They're reacting to questions they're asked. I get it. That's what happens in an interview. But sometimes you got to have those talking points you want to inject, you know, into what's my angles. Very weird. I don't know. Just not happy. It's just going to be what it is. And then inject into the conversation, you know, have your talking points to do that, and have those talking points be the evidence. At least, again, I'm talking right now about more mainstream ufology. And then with the abduction stuff, yes, the evidence as well, but also the statistical data, the numbers, the stats, I call it, you know, the numbers of people, the numbers of things that are similarities, the statistics on the evidence, on the kind of things that happen, on the kind of messages received. And I think, getting that out there, certainly if you're asked to do an interview, even something like this, a podcast, a YouTube, but even if it's something more mainstream, on that note, that's a good time for me to bring up that I did something I call I cracking myself up. I did something rash, something rather brazen, um, and had an idea at the beginning of the year, or a couple months into the year, this last year, to go. We need to be proactive in our response in the abductee contactee community to this disclosure stuff, and not sit and wait and be reactive when things get said or there's something negative said. And we need to put out a kind of united front amongst the major abduction researchers and abduction research community. And early on this year, it was looking like so much of this disclosure stuff, in even the last 4 years, was being put out there as with kind of a threat narrative. Now, it wasn't. It was a military airspace safety thing.
Yeah.
But there was somewhat a perception, and I was hearing it from the people coming on my tours and stuff like that, that whether it was being put out that way or at least misperceived that way, but it made me go, as a community, we need to address that and kind of steer a different direction. And so it really got me thinking. And then I thought, no, I'm aware of the history of abduction research to know that I know of abductees who've lost their jobs over the subject. I know abductees who've been divorced over it and lost custody of their children because they dare say they're an abductee. Like I said, many divorces, many people who've lost custody of kids or had to fight for the custody of their kids. And this came up, used by the opposing side or whatever. And then as well as people who've lost, like a doctor who lost his medical license over it because he dares say this had happened. You guys, the ridicule and the negative for abductees, when you really think about it, it's like it leaves like not a lot of reason to really talk about it. It's like more reasons not to, because it's not easy and you do come under attack. I've been in this field 32 years. I've been public with my abductions for 29 of those, let's say, almost 3 years of being public. I still get ridicule. I still get it. I still, even the attitude when it comes up with clients on my tour who ask me about it. And I don't bring it up and talk about it unless I'm asked. But there's a thing that even in my literature says, if you ask her nicely, and our concierges here at the Center for New Age that book tours and stuff for me, we'll tell people if you ask her nicely, she'll talk about it. But every time someone brings it up on a tour, I almost cringe, because now I've had two things happen. I've had people go kind of react, kind of smirk or ask questions, but I can tell that they're not sure if they're buying it. Okay.
Right.
But I've had the opposite happen, which is I've had a lot of people open up and share their own experiences. And that's when it's really rewarding. Yeah. A lot of people have opened up. And so you guys, so that's why I do it. That I'm glad I just kind of tripped into that by accident, but I'm glad that I did, because that brings up why I even do it then, because you're helping other people. I do it because on the tour, first I'm educating the people who don't know anything about it. And if their skepticism really shows, even if it's just in their attitude, let alone if they say something, I'll go straight to the evidence. I'll start peeling off evidence stuff. And I'll go into something from my own experience that I have a lot of evidence for. And I've changed a lot of people's minds by doing that. Because then they'll go, whoa, because then they're going, well, we've been out here on the tour with you. We're having real sightings. We know you're legit, And so when I go to that and I go to the evidence, like I said, I can change their attitude around. But the other thing is, so go to the evidence. But the other thing is, why put yourself at risk? Because you're helping the other people and you're giving a voice to the other experiencers who can't talk about it for what might be because of their family or their career or protecting their family or whatever, or those that are just too afraid to do it. And by talking about it, you'll encourage others to do so. You'll encourage other abductees, experiencers, contactees, military witnesses, whatever your version of contact is. Talk about it, you're encouraging others. And by showing that you're not afraid to talk about it, will you get just assume you'll get some ridicule. Just be okay with it. Will you get ridicule? Will you get people who look at you funny? Will you get negative comments? Will maybe someone in your family be upset? Just assume, hopefully not, but assume that you just be like, okay, if that's there, it's there.
Yeah.
But you'll also get the other experiencers, the abductees, saying thank you. You know, like that's why I wanted to thank Jay King for being out there. Thank you, you know, and others. Christine, who was, I guess, also on there as well with you guys yesterday. You know, but anyone out there, if you're an experiencer and you're out there talking about this, thank you, because you're representing the other people who can't talk or too afraid or are new to the experience and aren't sure what to say about it, etc. You know, and also, you know, when you're out there talking, have kind of, like I said, your talking points. Know what the evidence is for your own experience, know what the evidence for other people's experiences are. So when you get asked those tough questions, you can go there, know the stats. Anyways, which gets me back to, so I'm jumping all over the place, I realize, but
fine.
I tend to do that. Not just on this subject, in life in general too. That's how I roll. Okay. Sorry, everybody, but okay. So I came up with this idea to say, we gotta, first off, I'm also concerned with, because ridicule is alive and well, how, if this isn't being talked about in disclosure, if abduction and contact is well down the road for being included or talked about, which it likely is, okay? And I understand that. So it's not that I have a problem with that. It's not like, oh, we have to force abduction to be, no. But what we do have to do is go, if this is spun in a negative way, whether that's a threat narrative, I'm not saying it is. I know, you know, people out there go, well, it's not. And I go, well, I know that now. Okay. But, you know, okay. But we don't know where this is going to go. If it does, or the media spins it, even if the guy's disclosing, you know, the government, whatever, you know, aren't doing that, the media could take it there. So that's a problem. It's like, this could be talked about that way. And where does that put the people with the experiences? Are we then perceived as a threat or part of that threat? Heaven forbid, but that's a possibility. And then also, if it's not talked about at all, then is there a media or even a governmental view towards, well, this is real, but that isn't. Okay. Like, or that's not important, or those people are all fake, or whatever. This could be spun in the negative that could cause the ridicule to go up considerably.
Yeah.
And again, I know people that have lost careers, jobs, licenses, families, you know, etc. over this. So you go, okay. So I thought, we need to be proactive. The community needs to have a voice. I thought we need legal representation. Okay, because if stuff comes up like those things I just mentioned, abductees need to know they got people they can turn to, or not just abductees, witnesses. Okay, military witnesses. I'll get into that. Okay, so being that I'm friends with Dan Sheehan, he was the first person I called to say, Danny, we got a possible problem here. I have concerns, etc., etc. Now, first off, he said, you got to change the language from concerns and even a reactive language into a positive language. And I agree. I need pointers on how to do that, because I tend to go there, you know? Yeah. And, you know, so I said, okay, Dan, show me how, you know, but I agreed. And then I said, I think there needs to be some lawyers. And I said, will you help me or at least consult me on this? And he said, yeah, I'll help. I'll even do more than consult. And he eventually said, maybe we should make it part of his New Paradigm Institute. Now we're not there yet. Right now, what has happened is he said, who else would you like involved? Do you have others in mind? I said, oh yeah. Okay. And so I gave him my dream team list and we discussed it. And he said, okay, contact them. So I'm prepared to say who I've spoken to. And there's one individual that Dan himself is going to talk to that I don't know his response yet. So I'll leave his name off. I have a feeling he'll be on board. But I have a feeling he'll be on board. But I can go ahead and say the names of the people I did talk to, and they're all not only on board, they're gung-ho, and they're taking this to a whole nother level. And so we haven't had our first Zoom meeting yet, okay? I'm supposed to, one of them, long story short, one of the lawyers involved has offered to host that first Zoom meeting. Daniel Sheen himself is very busy, and his New Paradigm Institute and everything they're involved in doing the new Green Deal for the state of California. And he's written the whole thing and meeting with all the organizers with that. So great, that's fantastic. And he's still doing his stuff with the Native American Indians and everything else. If anyone's followed Dan Sheen, he's been very caught up. So he's very, very busy with these things, particularly the new Green Deal stuff. Yeah. So this other gentleman has said, if Dan's too busy, I'll host it. Okay, great. So now I got to get back to him and say, okay, yeah, let's move forward. And we'll pick a date, and probably after the first of the year. But anyway, so people are like, well, why is she talking about it then? I'm talking about it because I've had conversations with all of them. They're all on board, and they all agree on these issues we want to address, which is, and so the working title for the group, this may change, but what I'm calling it, and I introduced this to each of them and everyone was supportive of this title. In fact, some of them said, perfect, that's what we should name it. But when we actually get together and have a meeting, we'll see if that, changes at all.
Yeah.
But so the working title is the Contact Rights Coalition. That's what the acronym CRC, since we're into acronyms, right? Okay. So CRC, Contact Rights Coalition. And so here's who, real quick. Daniel Sheehan. Obviously, Daniel Sheehan, like I just said, myself, Terry Lovelace. Okay, now here I should say this for the people who may not know who everyone is. So Daniel Sheehan, obviously lawyer, director of the New Paradigm Institute, as well as the Romero Institute and other things, very famous for representing Lou Elizondo and John Mack and other witnesses, etc. Okay,
yeah,
and and has worked with both disclosure processes that Stephen Greer did and then Stephen Bassett did. And helped consult all those military witnesses and government witnesses to make sure that they were, protected, et cetera, et cetera. So he's quite an expert on that. So of course he was the first person I called, but he's on board, at least consulting. But we're going to see if it ends up being part of the New Paradigm Institute, but at the very least he'll be consulting. I'll say, then again, like I said, myself, so I'm an organizer, public abductee, researcher. Okay, there we go. Terry Lovelace, lawyer and abductee. Jim Lowe, lawyer and abductee, and works closely with Yvonne Smith's CERO organization. Kathleen Martin, researcher, abductee. Yvonne Smith, head director of CERO, researcher. Okay. Les Velez, director of Opus, abductee and researcher. Okay. Gwen Farrell, head of ERT research for MUFON, currently the head of abduction research for all of MUFON. Gwen Farrell, Whitley Strieber, famous abductee spokesperson and media person, obviously.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so that's an incredible team. And everyone was gung-ho on saying, look, we need to be proactive on how, first off, how we're addressing this in the disclosure movement as it comes for us in this disclosure era, and the media's reaction and to the subject matter. And again, focusing on contact abduction and witness testimonies, but making sure those people are protected. Someone just said talking points. Exactly. We're going to have a website that will not only be a resource if people do need legal help or anything, but it will also be, or this is what I envision, let's put it that way. So I could say
Right.
until it all comes together, but I envision it to be that. I envision for it to be a resource for the media on this subject. Should they have questions, what are the facts? Again, what are the contact, abduction, witness talking points for the media and for the community, so those who are inclined to be addressed by the media in whatever capacity, that you have a place to reference beforehand to say, these are the talking points should I get asked about this. I've seen the ball dropped and fumbled on this subject by some of the people already out there in the media. Lose quick to dance around it and avoid it. While I was just in the new movie Extraordinary, the Revelations, and Nick Pope has a great deal in there, and he's speaking very favorable about tongue-tied, favorable about the abduction stuff. In that context of that movie, I've also seen him in some mainstream interviews dance around it and avoid it, and I get we're not going there yet, and there's a tendency to avoid, but make sure you don't reflect on it in a negative sense. And then someone who unfortunately I adore, but has made some negative comments about it, is Ross Coulthart. And
Yeah, I think that was taken out of context.
okay. Well, he's done it like 3 times now. Okay,
Yeah.
but he just said on your panel yesterday when he was on with Ralph Blumenthal, right? He
Yeah.
said, Ralph, I've read your new book on John Mack, and I think it helped change his mind a little bit there.
Yeah.
Or put it in the right context, because now we can reference that. So yay, okay, but it makes me go, okay, I want this to be a resource that someone like a Ralph Blumenthal, like, now obviously he knows his stuff with his work he did with Dr. Mack, but
Sure.
but a resource that Ross Coulthart, etc., all these individuals who are out there speaking to mainstream media can have a place, or at least they can even reference and say, here's somewhere about the facts. And so it's not that this organization's replacing or becoming anything that the major abduction research organizations already are. I made sure what it was, Yvonne with Ciro, or Les Velez with Opus, and as well as Kathleen and Whitley and every, all of them. I made sure that I said, look, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. This isn't to replace what you guys are doing in your work with helping abductees in your research. This is just to focus on rights and protecting rights for the experiencers, on media outreach, and like I said, being proactive, not reactive on the subject, and a resource for people, whether you're a media person or an abductee going public or a researcher in the field, a place where you can get some quick, talking points and information on this. So we can focus on the things that are the evidence, focus on, like I said, the statistical data, focus on this psychological part, the psychology, that aspect of it. So people understand how difficult. That's one thing beautiful about being in the movie Extraordinary, the seeding, is we got into how difficult this is to live with it. And and I was really quite happy with that aspect. Now, granted, when you go out and you see the mainstream reviews about that, some people are harsh. They just don't buy it at all. But it was going that way far step of talking about hybrids and a hybridization program and hybrid parents and their emotions. And so some people, it was just too much for them. And that's okay, but it got them thinking. And now they're introduced to the subject, even if they had an initial negative reaction to it. But I think everyone would realize the emotional impact of the film and take that into consideration. And then so many people with those experiences have said, I mean, overwhelmingly have said, thank you. for what you guys did with that movie. And I encourage people, if you're new to the hybrid thing, or you question it, or you say, no, fortunately, one thing, and it was the makers of the film were given, and everyone says, there's no evidence in there. None of these people shared evidence. No, pardon. Every one of us who was in that movie brought up the evidence and shared the evidence and gave them photos and documentation and everything supporting the evidence for their experiences. But the makers of the movie wanted to focus on the emotional aspect and wanted to focus on how hard it was for the abductees.
Right.
So that got left out. But it wasn't that we didn't have it, it wasn't there. And if anything, I feel like I should encourage John Semple, Jack Roth, and Lori Wagner, the producers, to say, you guys, why not do another one focused solely on the evidence?
Right.
You've made 3 movies. The last one, Extraordinary, the Revelations, got all into why are abductions happening? Why is there contact? Why are they here? And it took it from 3 totally unique and different viewpoints. Controversial. But they weren't siding with anyone. I happen to know what their particular views are, but they weren't siding in the movie with anyone. They're putting it out there to have everybody think on their own, why is it happening? And to introduce the major schools of thought, the major kind of worldviews on why it's happening. Okay, what's this saying? Leslie,
MUFON Abduction Day. Thank you, Josh and Artemis, for the $10. But yeah, I've heard, I think it was James Carrion mentioned it recently.
Well, it's been a long time since I've talked about that, looked at it, blah, blah, blah. So one time I was pretty up on it. I just know what they found in their abduction data ends up matching what is overall known in abduction research. So I guess I can say, yeah, so if you're talking the statistics and the kind of evidence and the kinds of experiences that happen, I can say yes. Now, the part of that I was most interested in were the questions that they had for abductees regarding their MILAB experiences and the numbers and stuff from that, as well as the organization Free that tacked on questions regarding that in their questionnaire to well over 4,000 people, is actually a bigger sample, and very interesting results there. I think both of them come up at about 10 or 12% of abductees are having experiences with that. I've always said, though, they asked the wrong questions. Yeah, they asked some right questions, but then they didn't include or excluded some questions they should have asked. For instance, none of them were really asking, in your alien abduction, in your contact abduction experience of seeing ETs, were there humans present, either in military uniform or in suits, or in or other like medical personnel present? Right. And that question wasn't asked because a lot of people have seemingly an alien abduction, but have this other component also part of it, and or with the ETs feel that they're taken to an underground military base. So there's a lot of what I call these combined experiences of people who have combined covert human and ETs involved. And so there weren't enough questions to kind of get those numbers out of there, as well as other things regarding harassment surveillance questions, because a lot of abductees. So I actually contend from my research that I think conservatively the numbers of people having the military involvement in their abductions is about 40% of experiencers. Wow. Now, the different polls and things where questions were tacked on suggest like 10 to 15%. But again, they're leaving out some questions that would cause the numbers to go up. They were asking very specific questions that were kind of also limiting the kind of responses. So given the limitation, those were actually a high percentage. If you're talking thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions, I mean, a Roper poll was done suggesting over I'll just say close to 4 million people in the continental US alone were having abduction experiences. And so, yeah, and then there's research organizations with thousands and tens of thousands of cases in their files. I know of a couple different organizations with numbers that high of research investigate. It wasn't just like someone submitting a report. This is the person was interviewed, they were researched, So yes, you could say the 4,500 or whatever it is that the organization free has is a pretty good number. Now, people said
Right.
there was a bias there, but you guys, not in all their questions. If you go in and you take the questionnaire, not all the questions had that kind of positive bias. So they were getting accurate numbers. And I know a lot of people who responded, now was some of the lesser data, it was never thrown out. It's put out there in their reports and stuff. And it was on their website. I believe it probably still is. But that data, became lesser significance in relationship to the other numbers. But even if, even that aside, so many other research organizations with so many cases, and like I said, a Roper poll, again, that came back from the Roper organization, there were these key indicator questions that were tacked on by the major researchers and abduction researchers and abduction research, organizations, kind of their heads tacked on these questions. And it was all paid for, by the way, by Bigelow at the time. And that's, in my history of the working group talk, I do this whole timeline thing, if you've seen it, where I break down, because my interest in why did I look into that, Melinda? How did I get into that? Was because realizing these guys always had an interest in abductees and abduction research. And I was looking for where are the correlations between this group of individuals and their knowledge and the MILAB stuff. So I was kind of looking at it from that filter, that angle, but it grew. And then I worked with a research associate, Randy Kopang, on that research over 30 years of research him and I have done. And then we realized, well, so much other information was in there, so it kind of grew. But I admit, my primary focus all along was these guys always had an interest in abductees and abductions. You guys, when Kit Green says, and I think you guys addressed this yesterday, or they talked about it on the panel this morning, this famous kind of apparently statement or something from Kit Green, oh, alien abductions aren't real. You guys, Kit Green was a member of the working group from day one, okay? NIDS morphed into BASS, morphed into OSAP, ATIP, To the Stars, etc. Okay, Kit's been in there all along, and with the Bigelow in the years, I call it the missing years, in between.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys, they studied abductees. They paid for abduction research repeatedly. They paid for MUFON's abduction research. Okay, they paid for the MIT study. These guys. Okay, and the infamous Carpenter affair and everything that came up with John Carpenter submitting abductees reports without their permission. This has all been Bigelow and those guys. And yet Bigelow's just been the money, but the guys have been the researchers. Okay, and it's been the same group of guys. Now it's changed a few times. Yeah, different members, Lou came in later, blah, blah, blah. But there's been this kind of core group. And you guys, for Kit to say that when I have documents with his name on it, talking about abduction research results, they paid for I don't know if they paid for all, but they paid for a bunch of the surgeries by the late Dr. Roger Lear in implant removals. And they were getting the metallurgical results back in the 90s from the results from his surgeries. Okay? When the Wilson document came out, everyone talks about the Wilson memo, right? Wilson notes, I should say. Eric Davis notes about his meeting with Wilson, more accurately. And then, of course, the infamous emails that came out with that in Dr. Edgar Mitchell's files. But there was another document that people aren't talking about. And it was an internal memo for NIDS and BASS at the time, which talked about the results from working with a bunch of abductees and metallurgical results from implants, and that they were going to have this meeting about it. No one's bringing up that. And I'm like, you guys, this shows that these guys, this in itself, and it's the original document is on the NIDS letterhead. Okay, so you go, and it was a letter to all of them. It was actually not to all, I should say. It was to the Science Advisory Board. We're having a meeting come up where we're going to discuss abductees and abduction evidence and what we have on it. Okay, so you guys, you go, so don't let Kit say, they're not real when he has a history of researching and investigating. And by the way, they're doing the caudate putamen on abductees. I mean, the MRI research, I should say.
Yeah.
Caudate putamen on abductees. They're doing blood work from abductees. So, dude, why? Now, either I question, did he really say that? Where is that quote coming from? And if he did really say that, someone needed to jump down his throat and say, why, given you have this whole history, they're not spending all that time, energy, and money because they don't think abductions are real or important. Okay, come on.
The thing is, as well, with Robert Bigelow being involved, we know with a lot of the ORSAP data from the BAS studies there that it's just hidden away. It's not publicly available. Do you think a lot of the abduction research that he's involved with or previously with, is that hidden away as well, and not available?
He never published anything. He sat on everything. Come on, did anything from the working group, Bigelow's involvement from 1995 at least, no, prior than that, 85, from 85 till now, at least, we have a paper trail going back to 1985. Okay, did anything Bigelow ever paid for, whether it was the working group, aviary, NIDS, you can go boom, 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 NIDS, BAS, OSAP, ATIP, did anything ever get published or come out?
No. Not that I can think of.
No, yeah, exactly. So yeah, did any of their abduction stuff come out? No. Did anything come out? No. And yeah, I mean, they sat on everything. And now, granted, and even now, for as much as Lou and Chris know, they're not saying it. Now they're claiming their NDAs, and that may be fully 100% it, but they're not saying it, And now, granted, I give them credit for everything they've done, no doubt. I mean, no doubt, and I applaud them and they're heroes. But does that make them perfect? No. Does that make them 100% truthful? No. Does that make them, coming out with everything they can? Well, not necessarily, But again, they've done so much for us, so I have nothing but appreciation, of course. I mean, we're here and we have Gillibrand because of them. I mean, I think, I'm probably not alone in saying, gee, I think Chris wrote that thing, or at least had a lot of influence on its writing.
Right.
And yeah, I think I'm not alone in thinking that. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate, everything, but, and maybe it's just because they're NDAs, they can't talk, maybe. But I also think there's more. They have a past history with this group. I know someone, I can't go into great detail. Someone I'll just say, someone I know, actually a couple, that were having meetings back at ATIP with Lou at Bigelow, way back when. And so early on, when this was first breaking in the Times, they immediately told me, we were there, and and they have all this, information documentation of when they were there with him. And abduction stuff was even talked about then, so you guys, it's always been, that's my point to researching the history of the group, is they always had an involvement and an interest in abductions. That was my reason for looking into them. Now I learned a lot of other stuff looking into them, and I was so glad when the new Skinwalker book came out, because I had been saying for years Com Kelleher was the director of OSAP. I had figured that out. And when they came out and said that, I'm like, thank God, vindicated. And I had a lot of people get back to me and say, weren't you already saying that? I'm like, yeah, I've been saying that. I've been saying that for, I don't know, 5 years at least. Anyway, so luckily, I got backed up on that. But and played a bigger role. So now we're starting to go, oh, Keller is a little bit more involved in all this whole thing. Yeah, he was always involved, because every time Bigelow funded all these things, who was overseeing all those projects? Ding, 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 Kelleher. no mystery now. We know, and I was glad that it came out. I mean,
Yeah.
it just spoke to these guys' involvement, like I said, and God only knows what all they have that they sat on, as far as data and findings and everything.
Well, they talk about this huge database, the biggest UAP related database ever, that obviously isn't public. I
Yeah,
mean, gosh, what anyone would do to see that, I can imagine
I
it's
know.
incredible.
Everything they have. I mean, it'd be interesting to see any of it. And now they have a plausible cover that when they got the funding for OSAP, the creation of OSAP out of Bass was because that's when they got the Pentagon funding,
Yeah.
and the Pentagon came in. So it wasn't just bleeding, Bigelow, they got help. But at that point came the NDAs and blah, 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 Well, actually, see, all these guys uh, they have science and intelligence backgrounds and stuff that they already and corporate and corporate, governmental, and intelligence community NDAs, pretty much the whole gang. And of course, so all along there were things they couldn't talk about. But doing all this research in, since the 80s in this field and sitting on it, and having real money backing them. I mean, how much other serious research in the community could have been done with money from, that kind of money like Bigelow has? And yet these guys had it, and yet none of their data has been shared. So anyways, that's just, we got on a huge side issue there. Hi, Gary.
That's quite all right. Gary Voorhees Jr., thank you so much, my friend. Merry Christmas to you and the family also, man. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Merry
What
Christmas.
A guy. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And yes, absolutely. Wow, that's a big amount. Wow, thank you. There you go, Vinnie. There's a Christmas present. Oh, by the way, that's what I was saying. The Gillibrand Amendment, I say Congress, House, and Senate gave us an incredible Christmas present.
Yeah. We just need Biden to sign it off. He's got a couple more days yet.
I think he will before Christmas, no problem. I have not heard, I'd tell someone, go in the chat there and say it if you've heard any hang up on any part of the NDA by the White House. I'm not hearing anything. Now, maybe I'm just not catching enough mainstream news or something, but I'm not hearing any hang up. So I suspect, this is Sunday. I suspect tomorrow, Monday or Tuesday, he'll probably sign it. I mean, he'll definitely sign it before Christmas Eve.
Fingers crossed.
So, yeah, I've not heard of any hold up by the White House on anything in there. I mean, last year Trump held it up, but it had such huge passage numbers that they didn't require signatures. They could just go, oh, you're not? Okay, we'll just go ahead and pass it.
Right.
So it didn't require. So guess what? It has that many signatures again. It doesn't, even more. It does not require Biden, But I think because, so much went in, not just on this issue. I mean, obviously this issue is a very, very minor thing in the total NDAA, but obviously so much went into the NDAA and its various parts, as it always does. There was a particular reason or two supposedly last year that Trump held it up and didn't agree to sign it. Again, that was all talked about beforehand. Nothing's being talked about, to my knowledge, that Biden wouldn't just go ahead and sign this. So I expect it'll get signed right away. And we'll have to break out the champagne again. Vinnie, I'll join you in a glass of wine.
Oh, yes, that would be great. Well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't start hearing things trickling out into the media until January, to be honest. I think people will get Christmas and the New Year out of the way. And then, we've got some good reporters out there. We've got some that have been away. Gary Schwartz, I think he's NBC, has been away having a baby. And I think he's back. He's certainly popped back up on Twitter.
Was he the one that asked the questions of the Pentagon spokesperson? Was that him?
Gary Schwartz, he did a lot earlier on around the time of the June report, but he was doing features actually on TV as well as writing articles as well. So he covered it very well. So hopefully he'll start picking up the baton again.
Because I thought whoever that last gentleman was that asked such good questions of the
you're thinking
Kirby,
Travis Tritton. Do you mean Travis Tritton?
Travis. Yeah. So we know he's going to jump on this. Yeah, no, I think there's a few poised people to bring up the questions, and after this is signed, if there's any press conference with, at least, if not with Biden, at least with Jen Psaki, I'm hoping that people there, the press corps there, will bring it up and ask questions, and
Hopefully.
yeah, which, and then if she says it, that's Biden speaking, supposedly. Okay, so that's how it's supposed to work, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I have no doubt. So yeah, so I think we'll get another Christmas present. We'll get the
Yeah.
the big Christmas present, and again, though, maybe if there's some media attention, that would be great, and we need that for that awareness. I mean, it's real. I'm informing my clients on every single tour. I'm bringing it up as I tour, making sure those people know, and they may know a little, but sometimes they've kind of got stuff a little disjointed,
Yeah.
where they know just tiny bits, but don't really, but it seems, very few. I mean, occasionally I have someone, if I mention Gillibrand, and they know, occasionally, because a few people are listening to you and following things online and doing things, I mean, thanks to not only yourself, but the other podcasters and people out there who are putting the information out. And I think if everyone grows their audiences, because everyone's having very good guests and very good conversations, very thoughtful. I'm impressed by the level of intelligence, by the hosts and their guests, and so that's a good sign. And I think you guys, we have slow news times on this subject. Um, if these reports that are coming out every 90 days and then the public ones twice a year, well, does that mean we're waiting 6 months for information? I think so much is going to go on in between. Well, I don't think there'll be a shortage of news. But again, that's when you can go back to the historic data and bring your audiences up to speed on the evidence and the historic data, and even talk about abductions and stuff. So at least your audience is getting that information, even if we're in a slow news time on anything going on in disclosure. But obviously there's going to be major news times, because there's going to be the 90-day reports, the twice yearly reports, the Senate and congressmen talking about it, the movement towards hearings, if we start hearing that, so I think we're going to have tons of constant news. But I encourage everyone, keep this alive and well. Don't get discouraged if there's a, quote, slow time, because there will be. There'll be times when this isn't the major thing going on. And hopefully it'll also become a major mainstream news story. That's what I know we're all hoping for. And that's, one thing that we all want to be out there encouraging those, people who do have immediate attention, whether, like I said, it's, well, we mentioned Ross and of course Lou and Chris and everybody, so anyone, and even Blumenthal and stuff, or Leslie,
Yeah.
To have, to be getting the information out there and addressing it in the mainstream. I mean, they already are, and I trust, most of them, when sat in front of the camera or the mic, they're saying the right thing, but going back to my starting that organization, part of that was realizing over the last year there have been a few missteps on the contact abduction subject, so that's why I thought, okay, well, we need to have some media talking points and stuff, and the major researchers, should a media be looking to address that or ask questions, because it's not, oh, well, it's not being included, so therefore they're not going to look. No, they're going to have those questions because it's not being addressed. They're going to say, well, what about this? And again, I don't want that to have a negative spin. I don't want that to go to the possibility of increased ridicule because it's not being covered, and therefore they all go to the goofy stuff on this. So we need to let media agencies and stuff know there's serious researchers on this subject that can answer your questions based upon evidence and facts. So you're not grabbing the first tinfoil hat wearing idiot out there. You guys, I've produced conferences where I've seen them. I been there to help steer the media people coming in away from the people who show up in the tinfoil hats and the goofy alien costumes. You guys, when you go to a conference, please don't do that. You're making us all look like idiots. Don't do it. You go, if you're a speaker at a conference, gentlemen, wear a suit, coat and tie, at least a coat, please. Unless it's like Contact in the Desert, it's 110 outside. Then okay, or you're a lower shirt, you're cool. But you know what I mean? Yeah. But I'm saying, your image, women, be professional. You're representing the rest of the community. You're representing, and the media will go to the person in the alien costume, the person in the tinfoil hat. They'll, I've seen it so many times.
Yeah.
And then I've been at conferences where then the media walked away because the conference producers would not allow them to talk to those people. No, here's the researchers. Here's 10 people you can talk to. And they said, we want to go over there with those people wearing the crazy costumes and stuff. And then they left because we said, no, you can't interview those people.
Wow.
Now, should there be a limitation, blah, blah, blah? No, but if you're showing up in a crazy costume at a thing, you're either not serious, trying to make it look bad, or you yourself are really completely fantasy prone,
Yeah,
more than likely, and the media are going to make you look like an idiot, just like they always do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, hopefully that's changing. Hopefully everything going on will change all that. But again, that's why I said we got to have an organization so we're proactive in our approach, not reactionary. We're not going to wait till they go, what about this goofy abduction stuff? And then if they do, we need to say, well, here's some serious researchers. Here's a website. Here's people that can talk about it. And also maybe proactively getting out on shows like yours and others. I talked to Ian Doley today, and it's stuff. It's like, hey, how about having some of the people from this group once we have our first Zoom and we all are like, okay, I think we're all okay now, but let us have a meeting or two. But then, in January, how about having some of these folks on, to talk
Let's
about
do
what
it.
we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I love having the conversation because, it's new to me, this side of the subject. And I'm always willing to have any kind of conversation and put the information out there and let people make up their own minds. So I'd love that, like you say, have your meetings and then in the new year, bring some people and let's have an even bigger conversation. I think that'd be fantastic.
Because I knew you knew the list of names I read, and these
Oh,
are
yeah.
heavy hitters, and they all have a strong opinion. They have a strong opinion on this. As soon as I called them and said, I have this idea, I talked to Dan, we want to do this, everyone was like, hell yes. They're like, count me in, and then they're like, let's do this and this and this. And I'm like, whoa. So when we first have our first meetings, there's going to be a lot of to-do lists generated, but
Yeah.
they all said, not only does it need to happen, it needed to happen previously. We're overdue. And we risk, as fast moving as this disclosure stuff is, we risk having to be reactionary. So the quicker we do this and get it going, the more we can have a voice in the conversation, a unified voice in the conversation, directed away from ridicule, silliness, goofiness, fear mongering, whatever,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Shout out to Kelly Lee Dodge. Thank you so much. You're very generous and very kind. So thank you so much. Well, Melinda, we're just about to hit an hour and a half. Obviously, I'd love to have you back with this panel in the new year, but I'd like you to come back as well on your own and talk about the MILABS and the working group as well. Because that's a whole another aspect.
Now, how long? I don't know how long we had today. Did you want to get more into some of the abduction experience stuff?
Yeah, by all means. Yeah, okay. Happy to. I didn't want to. I didn't want to push it.
2 hours, or I didn't know how long this was.
Yeah, we can go 2 hours. I just didn't want to push it if you didn't want to talk about it, but please.
Oh no. It's just that other stuff. I'm so passionate about that group, and I'm so thrilled that my 18 people all wanted to participate. And I wanted to bring that up and why it's needed. People go, well, why abductions are just going to mess stuff up if we talk about it now, and I'm like, no, first off, you guys, just like that book coming out, bringing up some more of the bizarre stuff, it is part of the phenomena. There is a consciousness interaction. I say it to my clients every night on the tour. The attitude of my clients have everything to do with the quality of the sightings, completely 100%, you know. And the nights why now it doesn't mean coming going, I believe in UFOs, damn it, no, or even coming saying I have sightings all the time. No, no. It's the people who come on the tour and go, I'm just here to have a good time. I've had a previous sighting. I don't care if we have them or not. I'm just here to have a good time. This is fun, you know. And they come with a positive attitude and they're really nice to all the other clients. Those nights, we have the best sightings.
I've just got a couple of people. I've just noticed the chat here asking about the photos you've got on the wall in the background there that look quite UFOs.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, this. See if I can do this. This is a map of Sedona. See, there's Cathedral Rock right there. And I have spirals in it marking vortexes and pins marking sightings and abductions and whatnot. I have a key on the wall over there. There's the key. If you kind of, it's blurry, but that's that.
Yeah.
And so these pictures and whatnot are of sightings in the area. Now, at one time, I had like a little UFO research center here. And I had a separate little office in the back than where I am now in the building. And so I had it done up with UFO pictures and whatnot. Well, because I do readings too, I've slowly switched over time to having it be a little bit more of a appropriate space for my readings, because I wasn't having people come in. Like before the tours, they meet me at the Center for New Age. We meet out front. And so they're not coming in my office. There's really no reason to.
Right.
And I was almost going to do away with this big map and the pictures around it, but it was such a labor of love when I did it. And it does show like all the local, I have sightings and orb things and haunted and paranormal events, the UFO hotspots, significant sightings with witnesses or different color pin. And of course, abductions are also on there too, as I get those accounts in the area. And this area is a hotspot, meaning this area, all of Sedona and surrounding area, is such a hotspot for constant sightings and other paranormal events. So like I said, even though I kind of switched up the office, I've decided I'm going to keep that because it's such a labor of love, and eventually kind of replace some of these with some better ones. But you know, I have pictures of sightings and craft, and anyways, that's what all that is.
Sorry, just going to quickly ask, with regards to all the sightings that you do with the tours, do you collect the data and share it with people like MUFON or anybody like that?
Should I? Yes. Do I? No. Okay. I'm just too busy. Right. Okay. At times with some of the structure craft sightings, I did go and report on the MUFON database and
right.
also report to the National UFO Reporting Center, Peter Dambert's thing. Unfortunately, not all of them. In fact, I've only done it with like 5 or 6 of them. And yet we've had so many major structure craft sightings that at some point I may go back and re-enter some of those, like at least another 10 of them at least, you know, for some of the best ones, you know, that we had. Yeah. And so, but we just see stuff all the time. So it became like I would be having to go every day and spend hours filling out that stuff. Now, luckily, it doesn't take that long, but still, it takes a while. You got to go through and write up something, and I just don't have the time. So, but at least, like I said, out of the 58 structure craft, at least if I can get like 20 of those up there, besides the 5 that are, you know, there already, and even some of those, I thought I need to update those reports. Yeah. But anyhow, and with a few of the times I have reported, it's really nice. They've had an investigator, whether it's MUFON or Peter Davenport himself with National UFO Reporting Center, but they've had people, you know, call and interview me and my witnesses and whatnot. And, you know, because I'm quick to say these are the witnesses. And before I report an experience like that, I've asked the witnesses, do you mind if I report this? I just make sure at the end of the night, if we've had structure craft, I say, or a really, really significant other sighting, because occasionally we can have something really close and still not see the structure, still not see the hard edge, the metal, but yet have a really close, significant sighting. So So, you know, that's not even included in the 58. The 58 are when we can see, you know, when we can see metal, you know, or
Right.
whatever, you know. And so, or at least hard edge, you know. And it wasn't just like one person on the tour saying, "Oh, I think it's a disc or a triangle or a cylinder." No. If I have 12 people out there, I want it at least 10, if not 11 of the 12 to be certain that they all saw the exact same thing before I report it. You know, yeah. So, and usually everyone does. I mean, in fact, I've not had a structure craft tour where the other clients weren't also sure what they saw. You know, I leave that possibility that someone could have gone curled up in the car because they're cold or fallen asleep or taking a pee in the bushes. You know? But, you know, so far everyone has agreed and everyone's, you know, seen it. So when we've had them, and one significant event I led, it wasn't here in Sedona, it was in the California desert. I was just filmed for Witness UFO TV show with host Ben Hansen.
Yeah.
And we're going to be the first show of the new season. And I just talked to some of the producers again because they needed me to submit a bunch of still photos of myself and my tours and stuff. So I did that. But anyhow, so yeah, we're supposed to be the first show of the new season sometime. I think they're thinking like, I think February is when it starts. So, but I'll be putting that out there on Twitter and Facebook as soon as I have a date. So, but that was really fun, and it was a huge event with over 60 witnesses. Now, unfortunately for the show, one gentleman, a friend of mine who was there with a video camera filming the event, they interviewed him. His name's Graham. And they interviewed Graham and me, and then of course with Ben Hansen, he has another female host. So if anyone watches Witness UFO, but again, I'll be sharing it when that, you know, whenever I have anything going on, whether it's a speaking engagement, a TV, an interview, blah 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 blah. I usually will get it out there on certainly, you know,
Yeah.
Twitter and Facebook. And anyhow, so, you know, I tell people if they want to follow anything I do research wise, appearances, you know, whatever it might be, follow me on Facebook or Twitter, because I'll always put it in both places. Anyways, I'll let you go to questions. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Honestly, I just wondered if you wanted to go into any of the your abduction stories,
Sure.
or that'd be great.
Well, I think I should start because I always feel like I'm having to start at the basics, start at the beginning. For those parts of the audience that aren't familiar with my story, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I guess I'll do that. Okay.
Yeah. Please do.
Freeze up. Okay. A little bit of delay. Sorry. Okay. Yeah.
That's
just
okay.
A little bit of delay. That's all. Luckily, we haven't had any major freeze ups, so we've been doing pretty good. Okay. So.
Yeah.
In 1989 began my personal discovery process. Now, again, you guys, I'm an abduction researcher. I've worked with hundreds of cases, but I realized we're going to just do my stuff now. You know, I told Vinnie I would, you know, that kind of thing, just like on my tours. If you ask her nicely, well, Vinnie asked me nicely, so there we go. Okay, so in 1989, right when the Lazar story was breaking, a friend of mine, literally right, like you had John Lear going on a radio show called Billy Goodman's The Happening, talking about going out there with Gene Huff and Lazar, but they weren't using Lazar's name. They were using a fake name for him initially. But when that was happening and they were having sightings, they were, as I said, going on Billy Goodman's The Happening, talking about it. A friend of mine stumbled across it and said, "You got to listen to this." And I didn't have that much of an interest prior to that. I mean, I learned, as I'm about to tell you guys, I learned at that time I was an abductee my whole life, but this was the beginning of what started a discovery process that I did not have conscious awareness of that. I've been very involved in paranormal stuff my whole life, very focused in psychic development and exploring paranormal stuff since I was in high school, and coming to terms with going, hey, I'm a psychic, I'm a medium, and my kind of acceptance or coming to terms with that started when I was in high school. So we're talking late 70s, dating myself, but yeah. Anyway, so then in 89, this friend of mine stumbles upon that radio show and says, hey, you should listen to this. And that was Billy Goodman's The Happening. And it was John Lear going on talking about it. And so then she said, actually the producers of the show said, they had so many people calling in saying, where on Highway 375 in the Nevada desert is this? Can we go out there? And so they decided to rent 2 buses, and people could meet in a casino parking lot in Vegas. You could sign up ahead of time to be on one of the, sorry, my nose is just tickling. It's the air in here, dust. And sign up to go on one of the buses. Well, we were too late to do that. So long story short, we followed in our cars. We get out to this location this night with the 2 buses filled with people and all these other cars. And there were about 40 cars. And we get there and the buses are just ready to leave because we were probably getting out there 2 hours later. And they had a bunch of elderly people from Vegas and they said, we need to get back. Okay. Well, we stayed out with these 40 other cars and had amazing sightings. Well, we were so blown away. I mean, amazing sightings, stuff coming up from behind the hills next to Area 51 S4 area, coming up, darting off, stopping, shooting straight up. There was a cloud coverage. They would drop out of the clouds, do a falling, I should do this in front of the thing, falling leaf pattern, and it was just remarkable. We knew we were seeing things absolutely defy physics as we knew it. There were white Bronco Wackenhut security trucks all over the place. We had the sheriff out there with us. There were 2 sheriff police cars. And then there were black helicopters up in the air. And we're like, okay, this is real. It's going on. It defies physics as we know it. It's flying in and out of a known top secret military base. The government knows about it and they're lying. So I had a bunch of major paradigm shifts overnight, which I probably before then would have assumed was probably the case. Yeah. But it was still like the reality was just like hit me in the face. Okay. So it was like, okay. We were so blown away. We went out 2 weeks later and then a month after that. So in a 2-month period in roughly September, October of 1989, maybe the first trip might've been the last weekend in August, but anyways, roughly September, October 1989, 3 back-to-back trips out to Area 51, sitting out many nights in a row, having sightings. Well, the reason that was, it have to do with my abductions? Well, something about having those sightings was like inserting a key and turning it, because I started to have memories come forward of childhood, teenage, and young adult abduction experiences. And at first I thought I was losing my mind. I met a researcher out there, long story short, on my trips out there, I was meeting many researchers, including Bill Hamilton and others, that are well known now in the field. And anyway, so this researcher said, here's the business card of a therapist I highly recommend you talk to. She works with people that have had experiences. And this was a full-fledged psychotherapist, PhD in psychology, doctor of psychology. And she's unfortunately passed now, the late Dr. Deborah Troncalli. And she worked closely with Bud and John Mack and that whole crowd very closely. Wow. And they used to teach courses for therapists how to do the kind of work they were doing. And she was one of their early people in that. So she was very close to them and respected by them. And so this person said, go see her. Well, I started to have even current present time experiences. Now, everything at this point was conscious memory, and some of it was coming up in my dreams at night after having many sightings over that 2-month period. And I thought, like I said, I was losing my mind. And finally, I went to see her to say, obviously, this isn't happening. I don't think abductions are real, whatever. I'm losing my mind. And she said, well, let's work on it and see, And now going back to, so then I started to have, because she also did regressive hypnosis. Okay.
Right.
As part of her therapy. So we did that, and she'd worked with quite a few people. Now, before that happened, like I said, most of my memories initially were very conscious. And quick example, I had a roommate at the time. Her and I were having a late night discussion one night. She was separated from her husband, having some problems there. So I was discussing that with her, and then we had another roommate who was out of town at the time. Anyways, so her and I were there. We're having this late night discussion. I went to bed. I realized after our discussion, I had a project. I was an office manager at the time, had a project due the next day. Went to bed saying, I have to get to sleep right away, because if I fall asleep right now, I'm going to get exactly 6.5 hours before my alarm goes off. And I sat my alarm next to me, and I sat on my bed, and I did some deep breathing, like quick little meditation exercise. Again, I've been into paranormal and metaphysics stuff my whole life. So quick little thing, just very quick. Thought it took like 2 minutes just to calm myself down so I would immediately fall asleep. And I went back in my bed, kind of covers up, go to double check my alarm, which I'd already like double checked twice, but I go to check it again right before turning off the light. And in mid-reach, I go, what? I look back at the clock. It was 2.5 hours later. And I thought I was sitting there for 2 minutes.
Right.
And I just went, now at that point, I had heard of missing time and stuff. And I'm like, what just happened? And I couldn't get an image out of my head of these 3 gray aliens standing next to the bed, one of them holding a device. And I'm like, this is nuts. So eventually I said, Melinda, you got a deadline on a project tomorrow. You got to get up early. And so I turned off the light, got the rest of the way under the covers, fell asleep right away. Thankfully, my alarm goes off like 3 hours later, waking, literally like 3 hours, waking the dead. You know? And I get up, drag myself into work, get through the day, felt like I'd been hit by a Mack truck, you know. I get home, and my roommate Gail says, we're making dinner in the kitchen. She goes, what happened to you last night? I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, after our talk, she couldn't sleep, so she sat up in bed reading, and she kept hearing noises in the house. We had a 2-story townhouse in Tustin, California. Anyways, so she goes, I kept hearing noises, so she kept going downstairs and looking. She knew Scott, our other roommate, was out of town, so she's looking. She goes, no one's there, you know. She thought I just being paranoid or whatever. So she goes back to bed, but leaves her door open to the hallway. Oh, by the way, so she also, when she came upstairs after checking a number of times, she realized my light was on under my door. Like I had a big gap under my bedroom door.
Right.
And she goes, the light was on the room. It's like 3 a.m. So she knocks on my door. Knocks on my door, no answer. Knocks harder, no answer. Pounds on my door, no answer. Now she's afraid that someone got in and I've been hurt, or, you know, she's scared to death, right? So she goes in my room, opens the door. I'm not there. She went in the room during my missing time.
Wow.
Like 3 a.m. She goes in, I'm not there. And she goes, Melinda, you were not there. So she goes back downstairs, looks again for me, opens up the front door. We have a carport. My car's parked right outside the front door in a carport. And she goes, you hadn't driven anywhere. She looks all around, outside, inside. I can't find me anywhere. She goes back in her room. Now, so she said that, and she said, what happened to you? And I said, I don't know. She goes, where'd you go? I'm like, I didn't know how to answer, that night. And then we have dinner. That's, the night we're making dinner. Okay. And then so later on, she says, how do you feel now? Because she said, you seemed kind of upset before. I said, I'm fine. Everything's fine. She goes, well, there's more. And I go, what do you mean there's more? She said, after she went downstairs and came back up, and after going in my room, she goes, sits in her room and is reading in bed, hoping she's going to hear me come to the front door and, come inside any minute. And so she had her door open to the hallway. And then right outside the hallway, about 6 feet, was the staircase going down to the front door. Okay. And she said, I kept listening for you to come in. And also there was a flash of light in the hallway. So she looks to the hallway expecting to see me. And she's fully conscious, sitting in bed reading. And stepping out of the darkness of the hallway into her, and she has a little light on next door, of course. She was reading in bed. Stepping out of the hallway into her room is a gray alien. And she said, Melinda, it came right past the handle in the door, which is, door handle's about 3.5 feet. So we figured it was just about 4 feet tall. But she said, it came just past the handle of the door, stepped in my room, looked right at me, turned. Now, after going in my room, she'd closed my bedroom door, right? So she said, Melinda, it went through your door like a knife through butter and went in my room. So at that point, she not only went in my bedroom and witnessed my missing time, but fully conscious sees an alien walk into her room and then walk through my closed door into my room. And she had read Communion by Whitley Strieber at that point. This was in 89. And that came out, I think, in 85 or 86. But, and she said, Melinda, I'd actually read it twice. I think she said she owned it. And she said, are you having experiences like that guy? And I said, I don't know. I had not read it, but I had heard of it. It was a huge bestseller back then. And she goes, are you having experiences like that guy? I said, I don't know. And she goes, no, I'm telling you, you had experiences. You're having experiences like that guy. And then turned out she also witnessed other stuff happening to me. In fact, I'll jump ahead really quick. Now, I did not know I was having MILABS stuff.
Right.
That experience, two back-to-back military abductions in August and November of 93 started me self-investigating all that. But she was my roommate in 89 and 90.
Okay.
In 1990, she had a 14-year-old daughter, grown daughter, living with their husband. They're going through divorce. Okay. The daughter came to live with us for a little while. We were told a particular reason why at the time. It turns out now that may not have been the reason, but at the time. And years later, I was only roommates with her for just over a year, let's say, total time. And years later, I met up with her in a bookstore. We got together, and I came over to her place, and we sat and talked. First off, she had done a painting of that alien in the room, and it's this big head, big dark wraparound eyes. I mean, your classic. And I never knew that she had done a painting. She goes, I mean, she'd never ever showed that to me. And she goes, yeah, it was such a big deal for her to see that she drew a painting of the alien. But then she said, what else you do? And I told her what I was researching, and I was starting to do the MILAB research. So I started that, like I said, 93. And I think this was like 95 when I got together with her, 95, 96. Right. And she said, oh, I'm so glad you know that now. And I said, what do you mean I know that now? And she goes, well, that you know that was going on. I said, what do you mean was going on? And she goes, well, remember when Angie lived with us? That's her daughter. And I go, yeah. And she said, why do you think Angie moved? And I said, well, you said she missed her dad. She wanted to go be with her dad. Well, it turns out Angie was being abused by her dad. I didn't know that then, but it turned out she actually went to go live with her sister. And she said, well, Angie was being abused. And I said, she went back with her dad, and she said, no, she went with my sister. And I'm like, why? She could have stayed here. If Scott and I had known that was going on, we would have insisted she stay here with us, because they were looking for another place to live. Well, while you guys were looking, if it took a year or two, we would have insisted you stay with us. And she said, no, Angie couldn't be there anymore. And I go, why? And she goes, well, Angie was witnessing what was happening to you. And I go, what? And she said, on more than one occasion, they witnessed other alien abduction stuff of mine besides the one I shared. And then she said, and we were awoken. Get this. Now, I didn't know till 93. She's telling me this in like 95, 96. But she said back in 1990, when Angie was there, we were awoken in the middle of the night by military men shouting orders at you, and you crying and pleading, going, no, 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 I don't want to go. I was like, what? And I'm like, now I knew I had the two experiences in 93, but a couple of years after that, I did not know there was anything prior to 93. Right. And here she said in 1990, on more than one occasion, they were awoken by what clearly sounded like because they were just on their bedroom right adjacent to mine, and there's a thin wall between them. And she said, you know how it is in these bedrooms, you can hear everything. She said, we were awoken and heard everything going on. And I said, why didn't you say anything to me? And she said, you were so freaked out back then about your alien abductions, we thought it would be too much for you. Right. Like they were living with me, and they knew it was a big, emotionally difficult thing. And they were like, we thought this would be too much for you. And I'm like, oh my God. And so that's what she meant by, I'm glad you know that now. Because here they've been witnessing stuff happening to me in 1990 that I didn't even know. And then, but also prior, but starting in not like 1990 till 93, when I had the two back-to-back military abductions, I was having harassment surveillance stuff, which gets me back to those questionnaires that MUFON and Free and stuff had, they weren't asking enough of the harassment surveillance questions, because it starts with that before they decide that you're a person of interest and they're going to spend more money and more time. But you can have the infamous black helicopter harassment, phone and computer tampering, monitoring. I mean, I know both researchers and abductees who had only the files removed from their computer dealing with their abductions or their evidence. Only those things were moved, by someone tampering and getting in, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's just so much. And so it can start with all that kind of stuff. So I was having that stuff happen before I had a abduction that I remembered seeing military personnel present. But and then and also going back to the beginning of finding out. So obviously, after that time that was witnessed by my roommate with the alien abduction, the following July, I'm driving with two male friends, Steve and Mike, those are their real names, and we're driving on a mountain highway, and the three of us had an abduction together. And now it's not just my memories of alien abduction. Here I have friends taken with me that also remembered, and we all had conscious memory, and we knew we had significant missing time. We were driving a mountain road we've driven many, many times. We knew when we stopped and where we were going, and that the distance between them should have only been like an hour. And this took like 3.5 or 4 hours longer. We knew we had, there's a little debate. It was at least 2 hours, maybe 3 hours of missing time, at least 2, maybe 3. A little debate between us on exact timing, but at least 2 and possibly 3 hours of missing time, because we get out where we're going expecting to be there at a certain time, and it was a full 3 hours later that we got there. And so we're like, okay, clearly we had a significant period of missing time. And then we each had bits and pieces of memory recall. Eventually, I was the first one with Dr. Troncalli to get regressed over it. The guys were dragging their heels. Eventually, a year later, they both did. So I did like 2 months after the event. They were like a whole year later. And then like a year after that, Dr. Troncalli, with an office in Newport Beach, California, asked us out to dinner. And we go out to dinner with her, and she says, I waited till and I didn't know the guys kept going for regressions. I didn't even know that. Okay. So we were not coloring each other's memories or anything,
Right.
And she said, she waited till she did 2 successful regressions, because the guys were blocked about parts. And it took many, many regressions. So 2 successful regressions on each of us. She said, I waited till I completed 2 successful recalls from each of you to then invite you out to dinner. So it's like 2 years later, right? And she said, I'm here to tell you guys, you're clearly recalling the identical same experience in every way. Your memories are a perfect match from your own perspectives, like what our view of the whole thing was, but the series of events and what happened and what procedures, boom, she said, we're an identical match.
Wow.
And so the 3 of us got removed from the car, taken on board a ship. They went to take ovum. They did take ovum from me, very common. They went to take sperm from my friend Mike, and discovered that 2 months before this, he had had a vasectomy. And so they were examining him and saying, why would you do this to yourself? And then when the abduction happened, we were removed from the car. Steve kind of had a more fearful reaction, and they kind of shut him off a little bit. And he was, awake, but nobody home. Like lights not on,
Right, yeah.
And he was kind of out of it. He took a lot of regressions to get through that, and had a violence and spinning sensation in his regressions. And Deborah said she has this big recliner and would get someone under, and this big, recliner you sit in her office. And she said he would start to like fall out of it, and she'd have to lean over and like push him back, because he would have had such a strong violent spinning sensation. He would literally fall out of the chair. And but she eventually, got him to recall enough of it,
Yeah.
And then Mike and I had a lot more recall. But, we were mobilized, long story short, removed from the car, taken on board craft, very, very typical thing. They were examining Mike's vasectomy. They took ovum from me. I have a fear of heights thing, probably somewhat related to my experiences. They did a trust exercise thing with me of dropping me from a height. They'd removed me from the guys, so they didn't know when I was taking this other room what had happened, and I didn't know during that one brief scene what was happening to them. But in my case, they were taking me and immobilizing me and dropping me in a way that was very, very frightening. But finally, I realized they weren't going to drop me, and I was very upset, and I was crying and yelling at the aliens. Well, both guys said in their regressions, when I was brought back in the room, I was tear stained, bright red, like I looked like I was going to kill one of the ETs. And they said they knew something very emotional, and I'd obviously probably been yelling and crying to look like I did. And but I said to the ETs, why did you do this? And they said it was a trust exercise. You needed to learn you could trust us. Of course, we were never going to drop you or hurt you, but I didn't know that at the time. I was totally
Sure.
freaked out. But they take me back, and during that time, Mike was given, he has a very high-tech job. I don't want to get in details. Aerospace industry, very high-tech. And they gave him information to create a UFO detector that for a couple of years after that, he created them and sold them, and said he learned how to do it from the ETs in that experience that they gave him after they gave him the technical information to how to do that. So in that case, they helped him and they helped, me. Steve was just kind of out of it. I think they were just keeping him, calm. And
Right.
but anyway, so that was the bulk of that experience. And I continue to have experiences. My last one was 4 years ago. How are we doing time? I'm probably going on and on. But my last one was 4 years ago. And and I continue to have them throughout my life. And then, like I said, in '93, not only was I still dealing with recalling both consciously, a lot of times I had conscious memory, or evidence of an experience. For instance, I would have stuff in my environment, or other people taken with me. I was a part of, for instance, a mass abduction here in two mass abductions here in Sedona, one with like 100 people and one with 5 other friends. I was part of the Coronado experience that Yvonne Smith and Preston Dennett have both wrote about, that they now know is at least 15 people from the Hotel del Coronado in San Diego, California, and 15 of us taken together. So I was also part of that, and I'm a chapter in that book. My research or my experiences have been included in 30 books now. I've not written my own, but anything from, a paragraph to a whole chapter and anything in between in about 30 books, that I've been included in. So eventually I'll do my own. But going back to the MILABS stuff. So I ended up in '93, like I said, had 2 back-to-back ones. One was I was removed from where I lived in Southern California, coastal area, by guys who drugged me wearing camouflage in my bedroom and took me to an underground base, long story short, where that first experience, I had an experience of I have had what I think now might be a hybrid fetus. Okay. Now in this particular one, I'll be upfront with everyone, I did not know that I was pregnant, but I ended up having experience where they did a procedure on me that I later met a medical professional who is an expert supposedly in these kind of procedures, who told me that once he questioned me about what had happened, he named the kind of procedure, and he said it meant you had a problem pregnancy that didn't take and had misformed, either like maybe partial, like a tubal pregnancy or something like that. Anyways, but he said it was a procedure, a surgical procedure he had performed many times. And he said, I'm telling you, he even tried to mislead me when talking about the procedure to me to see if I would correct him. And he said, you even corrected me. And I'm telling you, you are stating, clearly I don't have a lot of medical expertise. And he said, you are describing very accurately this procedure, and that it meant there was a problem pregnancy. So in that case, it was probably a hybrid fetus that wasn't taking, that the military guys then removed from me in that procedure. And then, like I said, years later, I met this doctor who confirmed the procedure had happened, at least according to him. But And then that was the first one in August of 93. And then November of 93, I had an experience where I was specifically, now in my alien abductions, I've seen a lot of technical stuff. I've been sat at the controls, flown a ship, been shown navigation propulsion, been shown propulsion systems, how they work, and sat at computers. And it's actually very common for abductees, but the abductees who have a lot of that become of interest to these covert guys for for obvious reasons, and because they're interested in that. There's more. There's predominantly in my MILABS research. There's 5 areas that they're most predominantly interested in. But before I get to that, in this experience, I was specifically interrogated about a piece of extraterrestrial technology that I had seen, and I was being, interrogated about that. I went to a place, again, underground base situation, but in Southern California, that I've now met 6 different insiders who have all been there and or work there, who questioned me about it in all separate conversations. But all of them came back and said it was called China Lake Annex as part of the China Lake Naval Station, but an annex of that where they deal with this technology. And one, I don't know if your audience or you have heard of jump rooms before, but there's a way of being teleported in these situations. They call it jump room. And I even was taken to one of those facilities as part of that base and in the end of that experience. That years later, I met a young man who had also had an experience there, who in front of another group of people that I just happened to be sitting there in a coffee shop hearing him talk, he goes into detail about that same exact jump room in great detail, explaining it exactly what I saw. And I'm like going, and I never talked publicly or anything about any of those details, ever. And so, and my jaw was just like, hit the table. It's like, oh my God, here he's clearly been to the same place. The only difference in our memories of every detail, the building, the exterior, going in, the process, everything, the security doors, all this stuff. The only difference was the security guards, when they took, and his experience was 15 years after mine, approximately. We figured out it's approximately 15 years after me. When I went in, the security guy leading me through the doors did a keypad, and then put his thumb up like a thumb scan, thumb scan. When he went through, he and the guy take the guard taking him through, did key and then put their eye up, a retinal scan. Right. That was the only difference in the facility, and all of our detail and memory was. Mine was thumbprint. They'd replaced in 15 years, gone to a little more high tech to go to retinal scan. Otherwise, it was the same process. And that just floored me, because that verified his experience to me and me to him. And, like in the Coronado mass abduction, I recalled seeing some of the other people in that abduction. One of them I did not meet and become free. The experience happened in 94. A guy named John involved in Yvonne Smith's Zero Group, who's also in the book. Okay. I did not meet him and become a friend of his till 2008. In 2004, we're both part of this mass abduction. He gets later regressed again. He'd already been regressed over the event, but gets regressed again over it, recalls seeing me. I get regressed, and in the regression with Yvonne, I recall seeing him. We didn't become friends till 2008, but we were both regressed after 2008 for the event. But both of us in separate regressions recalled in 94 that we saw each other there. So that kind of cross correlation of like a mass abduction. There's a guy who was a client of mine, came on my tour, asked to talk to me privately the next day. Long story short, had multiple alien abductions. He didn't live in Sedona any longer, but for a number of years he did. I was part of a mass abduction here that he starts talking to me about multiple alien abductions here. And one was a mass MILAB event involving military and ETs together. He starts describing part of that event. He is describing, and I was taken with other people here, by the way. That was the 5 of us taken together here. So my friends recall that same event already. Here's this other guy, a client of mine, comes in, talk to me privately, recalling that event. He was one of the other. Remember, there were like 100 people. There was 5
Right.
of us that knew each other, but this was an event of like 100 people. Here's a complete stranger talking to me, recalling the whole event, saying, "Have you ever heard about this mass abduction?" And I was like, yeah. He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I was there." He goes, "What, you've met other people involved?" I said, "No, I was there." He goes, "What do you mean you were there?" I go, "Me and my friends were there." So he's a complete stranger recalling the same event, the same date, all the details about it, including some really weird, unique details. And he, and 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 I said, "Yeah." I said, "I was one of the other 100 people there." Now I kept wondering, was I going to ever meet more people who were there besides the 5 of us and him? That's 6 or 7 of us total. But so far I've not heard anyone come forward and share that. There are
Right.
details we haven't shared, so I know if people share those, then they were probably there. But the confirmation for him and me both, vice versa, for that we were both there, because you know, and he said, "Do you remember?" And we were like finishing each other's sentences. There was another mass MILAB event I was in, and also another mass alien abduction. When I talked to those other witnesses, we literally finished each other's sentences. "Oh, when he did this, and then he did this to you, yeah, and then we went over here, yeah, and then we did this." We're like finishing each other's sentences because we remember the same stuff. You know,
Right.
and so that the witnesses of experiences, obviously the physical evidence. One of my experiences was landing trace evidence of a mark left on the ground, and there's many cases, many abduction cases have landing trace. Many have implant removals, MRIs and X-rays showing those implants, etc. Now, when Dr. Roger Lear was alive, I did have him X-ray me extensively. Nothing came up in the X-rays, even though I have memory now. Kind of his ex-partner doing some of that, Steve Colburn, has tested me behind this ear, and it was tested me all over with equipment, but I ping 2 different pieces of equipment. He said, "You could ping on one, but pinging on both is highly suggestive something's going on." And I ping here behind this ear and at the what's called the T3 at the base of the spine, or top of the spine, I should say, base of the
Yeah.
skull. But that T3 vertebrae is one place that it's very common for abductees to either have an implant or have problems or remember experiences where they messed with that. It's extremely common. I mean, there's so many commonalities in these experiences that are known in the abduction research community. There's just so much data. That's why now we don't need all of it on that website for the group.
Right.
What we're wanting to do though is have just some of the key talking points, like I said, the statistics, the key pieces of evidence. So again, there's, if people get asked by the military or are doing any kind of interview, article, whatever, they can talk about it with knowing that they're representing the research correctly, kind of a thing. So anyways, I know we went all over the place. I just
It's fine.
babbled on.
No, no, absolutely,
I,
absolutely fine. I wanted to hear your stories. That's absolutely why we were doing this. So,
well,
yeah, thank you so much.
there's some, obviously there's more there. I've had so much. And, and it was a long discovery process, like I said, starting in '89, going into the early '90s, and just a long process to uncover and remember and come to terms with it. I realize anyone out there with experiences, how difficult that is. Give yourself time and space to get through it. Um, it happens to a lot of people. Like I said, the Roper poll, the tacked on question said close to 4 million people in the continental U.S. alone, and organizations with thousands and tens of thousands of cases in their files. So you're definitely not alone. It happens to a lot of people. It's kind of really understood both in the research community and overall ufology too, that if you're highly drawn to this subject and you have a need to discover and know, and and there's an emotional need there, it probably means you've had experiences. A lot of people who they get into this subject end up discovering and a lot of the major researchers in the field know that they're abductees, even if they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And but it's extremely common. You're not alone. Um, gather your evidence, take photos of your marks, your bruises, your scars, your landing trace evidence, the glowing handprint in the wall, and because there are those, the fluorescence, all that stuff. There's so much stuff. Gather your evidence, take the photos, record your witnesses' accounts if they see the ship or the ET or whatever, and and at least for your sake, that will help you document your own experiences. And then if you do go to a researcher, an investigator, a therapist, any of the above, then you'll have that for them. And, and like Yvonne Smith always, oh, are you there? Okay. I
Yeah.
lost you for a sec, but Yvonne Smith tells her people, and so do the other therapists and stuff, they tell their people, draw your experiences, it doesn't matter if you're not an artist, draw stick figures, but, make an account, of the memory while you have it, particularly if you have missing time, you recall it right away, or you have the abduction dream or whatever, um, it's a long process. It's and if there's smoke, there's fire. If you start to have a bunch of the traits for an abductee, or you have one experience, there's more. That's the way it works. It
Oh, lost you.
runs in
You're freezing up a little bit.
family to repeat throughout your life. I know. Okay.
Oh, you're back.
Even sorry about that. Even
That's okay.
do I have you?
Yeah.
Okay. So even the famous stories that you think are one-time experience, most of those people know they've had multiple experiences. Oh, Vinnie, I was gonna say you did your mic because you're vaping. Okay, that's no problem. All right. I just went on and on, like I said.
Honestly, it's fine. It's fine.
You guys, people sometimes get mad at me when I laugh about this stuff. It's like you learn, if there's trauma, you learn to move beyond it. You learn it, like John Mack said, it's a transformative experience, like Whitley says. I mean, you guys, all those people that have said that, they're not wrong. It is transformative. You will grow and learn from it. And if you are in trauma with it, you'll get beyond that. And I've gotten to the point where I laugh about it because there is an absurdity to it. And it's also kind of my therapy. Some people get mad when I do that, but it's my release. It's my therapy. It's how I deal with it. And, but, like I said, you're not alone. It's an investigator out there. It's going to drive me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's coming in and out.
Everyone out there, be kind to those who've had experiences. Okay, well, that's probably I know, man, that's crazy. I started to say, be kind to those people who've had experiences.
Yeah.
That's really frustrating, isn't it? Sorry, gosh, you guys, it was fine for a long time, but okay. Well, that's probably a sign. We're probably about wrap up time. Vinnie, did you have any last question for me or anything that you'd like me to address?
No, nothing in particular now, but I would like to come back and discuss the working groups. And again, like you mentioned, with the new group that you're forming, if you bring some of those guys on, and we can get the message out to more people about what you intend to do and what you're looking
Sure,
at.
absolutely.
That'd be fantastic.
Anytime. I'm very happy to do your show. I'll get a better internet connection, I promise. Oh, sorry. You see, there was the delay. I started to say, we had the delay because they hang up, but I'll get a better internet connection, I promise. This should not happen. It's crazy. And it's supposed to be good here at the center, but I don't know why. There's a problem. So, but thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate it. I know I yammered on. You probably had questions you threw out the window.
It's fine. Honestly, I prefer it when it's organic.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, I enjoy doing it. I'd be happy to come on anytime about any of those subjects.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And if I don't speak to you
Sure.
privately before, have a fantastic Christmas as well. And yeah, enjoy your time.
Yeah, you too. Happy holiday. to everybody out there, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and I hope everyone has a happy and safe one for sure. But again, thank you for letting me go on and on. You know, it's important that this be included in the discussion, at least amongst the community, to know how important it is. You guys, I didn't say this, or maybe I did. I can't remember if I did. You guys, what is the significant evidence for what the ETs are doing? Okay, when you go to, okay, you know, like they're saying, oh, they're here, you know, disclosure. Oh, we have craft. Oh, they're involving the military. Okay, who's flying them and why are they here? Well, we haven't addressed who's flying them yet. Okay, so we'll get into that. But then when you go, whoever that is, they're not us and they're not from here. They're not from here, physical, right? You know, so whether they're interdimensional, interplanetary, interstellar, from originally from somewhere else, like Rich Dolan was just saying in that panel today with Ryan and Ian Doley, okay, that were they originally from somewhere else and then came and set up shop here, whether that was another dimension or under the oceans or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, regardless, they're not us. So we can agree there, right? It's not us, unless it's us in the future, but that's not us now, and that's not us here. Okay, so those things too. So we go, okay, it's not us. Extraterrestrial means more than the Earth, so the term still applies. Okay, it's more than. Okay, but then you go, okay, well, once we get into the fact that they exist, then you get into why are they here? Well, the number one piece of evidence or statistical data for what they are doing when they're here, other than cruising around in the sky, when you really go to brass tacks, pure stats, pure statistics, the only place where there's a ton of evidence that suggests they're doing something here is abductions. You could say, yeah, there's cattle mutilations. Sure. There's crop circles. Sure. There's military encounters. Sure. There's crash trips. You go to everything, the numbers are this big. I mean, even though there's a lot, it can, okay, maybe they're this big. Okay. But the place where the numbers get this big is when you look at the abductees, the abductions, and the evidence for it. So that is even though they are doing other things here too, that is a significant thing that they are doing here. That's why abductions matter. It gets into why are they here? And then what are abductions about? Well, they're about many things, but they're predominantly, the statistics are still true, predominantly about the creation of hybrids. And you go, why are they creating the hybrids? I was just in a movie, Extraordinary, the Revelations, all about this very question. Okay. A lot of controversial things there, sure, but regardless, this is what they're doing. This is what the evidence shows they're here doing. That's why it matters. And that's why it matters, because those involved in the disclosure stuff are going to start asking, whether it's the media, whether it's the public, whether it's government officials, whoever, they're going to say, well, why are they here? What are they doing? And when this comes up as one of the things they're doing, there could be a lot of reactions to it. Not all of them positive, you know. And that's why I felt like we need to start that thing. But you guys, just bottom line here is know that people that have gone through this have gone a lot. It's emotionally difficult. It's very isolating. Be kind. Listen to them. Be allowing. Don't prejudge people, you know. And abductees, have your evidence ready, because it's going to be needed. Thank you.
No, that's the thing. That's the thing. No matter what we talk about in this subject, I think, you know, the one thing we can all do is just listen, be kind. We don't need to mock or ridicule. It's been going on for long enough. So, yeah, I second that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's hard to go through this. It's really hard, you know.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Well, well, thank you again. I've got a couple of announcements. Actually, I missed a couple of things in the comments. I'll do that. Megan T, I've just had to scroll back up. Thank you for the super sticker. Really appreciated. Megan T, again, thank you for the membership. It's so hard trying to keep my eye on everything. Thomas, thank you for the $5, Thomas. Another great show. Join me in supporting Disclosure Team, Vinnie. Thank you so much, my man. That's great. And thank you to everyone that's been lively in the chat tonight. You know, I'm sorry I don't get to like read through every single comment and that there's always so much going on, but I appreciate you all being here. And
thank you everybody for listening.
Yeah, it really is. It really means a lot, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you. I'm going to be back one more time before Christmas this Tuesday, the 21st of December, at the same time as tonight, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. In the UK. And I'm going to be joined by a good friend of mine, Mr. Ashley Cowie. Now, Ashley is a Scottish author, historian, explorer, television presenter, and producer who currently resides in Colombia and is now getting involved with the UAP phenomena. So please come check me out on Tuesday with Ashley, because it's going to be a great conversation, and we may have a little bit of an announcement as well. So yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to see you all there. So yeah, thanks again, Melinda. If you just hang on, we can have a little 2-minute chat afterwards. But again, thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day, evening, wherever you are. And yeah, see you soon. Take care.
Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.